stated goals of the conspiracy, so to speak, can be found on the websites of disciplines like women's studies. It's to bring down the oppressive patriarchal structure of the West. And that's a deadly serious aim by all means possible, including an assault on the basic categories that we use to orient ourselves in the world. And so the theory is driven by the idea that the best way to construe Western civilization is as a power structure basically produced by men for men that's fundamentally oppressive and that needs to be dismantled from the bottom up. And so it's easy to find out what the aim is because it's stated very clearly, to produce activists to bring that about. And that's especially true of disciplines like women's studies and the cultural studies disciplines.
You hate those courses, don't you?
Well, it's not so much that I hate them, it's that I'm embarrassed to be part of the university because of what the universities are doing.
You claim that there's sort of pseudoscience or false science.
It's not a claim. It's absolutely the case that it's not even, you can't even call it pseudoscience because it's not science. It's just driven by a set of ideological presuppositions, the most pernicious of which is that the best way to understand history and understand people is as a consequence of their group identity, which is unbelievably dangerous because what it does is push us back towards a tribal direction. You know, one of the things that I love about England, about the UK in general, is that over the course of any reasonable historical development, Britain developed the idea of the sovereignty of the individual and instantiated that into the political system. So that the notion was that you should always view people as individuals first and as members of a collective, if at all, far second. And that's what accounts for the spread of freedom and productivity and democracy throughout the world. And the universities are doing everything they can to critique that at the most fundamental level possible, all in the name of some false compassion and hypothetical equality.
Come on, Sophie, I've voted for your party. I voted for you in the London mayoral elections. What do you say to that? What do you say to that?
Well, I suppose my question is, you call yourself a sort of classic British liberal. And I was very interested to see that description of you. And I'm also fascinated by your book about, dealing with the chaos in which, as you yourself say, men find themselves in, or it's predominantly aimed at men.
No,
and
it's
I think
not,
that. Oh well, I'd read an article with you in which you sort of said, well, yes, it probably is mainly men. So that's what I'm basing that on. I think so. Taking all that into account, why do you think it is that so much of what you say is so very popular with the alt-right?
It isn't. And you don't have any evidence for that at all. Any more than the evidence that alt-right people watch this show.
Daily Stormer, Neonite website, Saviour of Western Civilization.
Oh, well, that was all taken apart today by a number of Jewish publications, by the way, showing that, first of all, that was all satirical commentary on the part of the alt-right, directed at taking me down, for example. And there was an alt-right article yesterday published saying that I was a Jewish stooge and shill. So, well, this is absolute nonsense, and I don't appeal primarily to the alt-right. There's no evidence for that at all. It's the proclivity of...
I never said primarily, Jordan. What I'm interested in is why you think that you get the reaction that you do from the alt-right. Looking at, the Cathy Newman documentary.
What reaction?
Interview.
There's 10 million people watched that and commented on it.
I'm talking about what I saw, and I'm curious to know what your reaction was to the glee with which the alt-right seized upon that interview.
I don't accept.
Should we deal with the death threats? I mean, she had, I think, a dozen.
I don't accept the concept that it was the alt-right that was doing this. There were 10 million people who commented on that video, and about 95% of them commented negatively on Cathy Newman's behaviour. You think there's 10 million alt-right trolls watching that?
Did you not? You accused her of spinning a victim narrative in an interview with the Radio Times.
You mean what Cathy did afterwards?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what happened.
But wasn't that because Cathy Newman, for quite a while, and she's a great accomplished journalist,
well said,
sat there looking at you with her mouth open and slowly closing like a goldfish, because she didn't know what to say. And so she was coming back afterwards and making the point, well, actually, I did know what to say, but I was giving you time, or words that
But given that she said, I'm going to find that and kill her, I'm going to find that and execute her. Is that spinning a victim narrative when you get that popping up in your Twitter inbox?
Well, it depends on... What happened with Channel 4 was that they put the whole interview up, which was quite a shock to me, because I didn't think they would. And then people were vitriolically opposed to what had happened. And so there were hundreds of thousands of comments. And when you get hundreds of thousands of comments, there's going to be some subset like this. And people did analysis of these comments, by the way, and showed that the bulk of the ones that were vitriolic in terms of percentages were actually directed at me, not at her. And it was in the best interests of the Channel 4 people to spin this as a victim narrative, because that's what they do anyways, but to construe Cathy Newman, who's...
Did you get death threats, though?
I've had death threats. I don't know if I got them specifically because of that interview, because I hadn't said anything contentious, but that's certainly happened to me. And seriously enough, so the university increased security around my office. But I mean, when you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with millions of people's comments, then there's going to be a percentage of them that are produced by people who are, well, not mentally well to begin with. And I also tweeted out afterwards. You know, after this had gone on for a couple of days, I tweeted out something asking people to lay off her because enough was enough.
Yes, you did. Yes.
But I can tell you from my own experience that about half the people on Twitter are not mentally well, so that goes as standard.
Yeah, well, it's about 1 in 20 or 1 in 30 in the general population, right. So, you know, you're going to expect extremist
I think it's comments. Well, I mean, actually, I remember the former government chief whip, Patrick McLaughlin, saying, and he's a great man, he says that about a third of the UK population, and this is a serious point, have some form of mental illness. And he was saying to me that as a government chief whip, we're always being told that MPs should represent the general population, and there is no doubt that there's an over-representation among MPs in that area.
That's something for you.
Well, that's a good thing.
I'll probably now get a lot of Twitter hatred mail for
forgive me, because I've got to jump in, because it seems only fair, as we dragged Jordan over from Canada, that we should mention this. This is the 12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos. Rule number 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Now, the question I've written is, how is that an antidote to chaos? I share that view. I think if you carry yourself, you project confidence, and confidence wins people over. Is that your thing?
I think not only does it win people over, it orients you properly in the world. I mean, to stand up straight with your shoulders back is actually to adopt a stance that in some sense is maximally vulnerable. It's not a defensive crouch. It sort of exposes you to the world. And the clinical literature on that sort of thing is clear. If you want to move towards mental health, then what you want to do is voluntarily confront the things that you're afraid of and are avoiding. And so it's a matter of courage, not of power, and of willingness to take on your own vulnerability and fragility. And that does broadcast that confidence to other people, and that's a good way of making your way through life.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.